most of your power comes from your legs, even in putting. It doesn't matter how hard you snap the disc. If you use your lower body to get that power, the rest of it is just your hand extending, and the disc will get there. I promise. You still got to spin it, you still got to push it, but all that start energy comes from your legs and your hips going upwards, and that generates the power, right? So for straddle putting, you want to get nice and deep and extend like this. So almost like you're bouncing up, right? And you're on your tippy toes now. You're not falling over like this. So you want to make sure that you almost practice your stance. So what feels comfortable that you can do every time and still maintain balance. Same with stagger putt. People that don't use your legs will stand straight up and go like this, and not have all that built up energy of swinging back. You see a lot of pros kind of come back like this. So you generate that power from your lower body, and then you extend, and that's why their leg comes up. So you want to push all that power forward and up. Not all the way forward unless you're jump putting, but you guys understand what I'm saying is coming down, using your legs, using that power to get to the disc. And you don't have to throw the disc that hard to get it 30 feet or less, right? Any questions about stance or what makes sense? I personally do because I push putt, so when I putt, most of my misses are high or low. Of course I miss left to right, but 90% of the chance I miss high or low. So most of my power comes from a straight up and down motion, so I'm appreciative to the sky. So that's why when I personally putt straddle, I try to get as low as possible. I try to bounce up like that to get that extra power. For spin putting, it's probably a little bit different, but as long as your release point is coming up to the same, it should be relatively the same push putt versus spin putt. But really popping up to your tip toes is going to generate so much power. So we'll go into circle 2 a little bit. That's a little bit different from circle 1. As I was talking about earlier, how you kind of want it to be on hyzer for most of the path. So if you're further away, most of the time you should be aiming on the right hand side of the basket, or even all the way right of the basket, so it swoops in, right? You can have a straighter putt from 40 feet, something like that, so it goes within the basket the whole time. But if you're further away, you really want to make sure that this is coming from right to left. If you're lefty, left to right, of course, to maintain the distance, etc. And it's going to be more consistent in the long run, right? So if I putt, if I try to spin putt really hard and flat, miss, I go way past versus a hyzer angle. I know if it comes down, it's going to get to the ground very quick, it's going to be more consistent. And the main point about putting is confidence, right? So if you're going way past, and now you're missing your 25-foot comebacker, the 3 putts start to add up, your confidence gets lost, and that's not a good thing, right? So you want to make sure that you still stay confident on your circle 2 putts, and you're trying to make them, but just like, golf, same thing with disc golf, you want to miss close. So you want to be coming down to the ground as it's going by the basket, so you have an easy tap. So for circle 2, there's many different ways to jump putt if jump putting is more comfortable for you. The general rule of thumb is don't jump putt if you don't have to. That way all your practice from circle 1 translates to circle 2. You're just putting 20 feet further, right? Once you feel more comfortable, let's say you make 8 out of 10 from 25 feet, then you can try to start to be more consistent on jump putting. When you jump putt, there's more things that can go wrong, right? If you're standing still, there's only one motion. When you're jump putting or step putting, now you have to worry about jumping and releasing at the same time. So now you have the height to worry about, your aim to worry about. So general rule of thumb, when you're practicing your circle 2, even if you jump putt all the time, practice standing still, because not only does that help in certain scenarios, it helps get your power up. So when you think of putting, you don't think of power too much. But if you can get the disc there from 40 feet like this every time, now think about when you walk out 15 feet, now you're 25 feet, that's gonna feel like a tap in, right? You know, you don't want to drill up the center of the pool every time as hard as you can. Obviously, if you miss it further away, spit outs, etc. But you want to have a nice smooth pace coming into the basket at all times. So to go through the two advanced ways to jump putt, circle two, you have a step putt and a jump putt. And these can be in any way, shape, or form. A lot of variations, so anything I say is not right or wrong, just recommended or my preference, right? So I personally like a step putt. I think it's more preferred for push putters. But a step putt looks something like this, where when you're following through, right, I'm putting it and finishing through. So I'm not actually, doing the fancy stepping like that. You can if you want to, but it's not preferred. A lot more things can go wrong in your release point when you're already ahead of your disc, right? So when I'm putting, pretend I'm circle two, it's a regular putt for me, it looks like this. A circle two putt, same thing. I just finish through. That way all the momentum and power from my legs is right there. I can just follow through and get it there that much easier, that much more power, just like anything if you follow through with your body, right? Jump putt's a little more advanced.
Here's the jump putt. You just step.
More things can go wrong, but usually you can get the disc there easier. If you practice your release point, how it's coming in, it might help you make some longer putts. So usually what you want to do for a jump putt is have your same stance, and your right foot should be the one jumping forward. Step putt is your left foot, right? So you go opposite for step putt, jump putt is your lead foot. You're going through it like that one swift motion. You're going through it like that. So your right foot should be coming up, your left foot follows through. Those are all whatever feels right, So circle two putts are more preference to the thrower. Whatever feels comfortable, you just want to make sure you're giving the disc a chance to go in the basket without going too far. There's way too many super aggressive putters that lose their confidence after one putt because they three putt, and that's the last thing that we want, right? So going into more strategic putting is, using your head, knowing when to lay up, when to run it. I hate laying up, but sometimes you have to, right? There's a lot of things that can go into that, such as reading the wind. I assume most everyone who plays disc golf knows how to read the wind to some extent, whether you do it right or wrong, you know about wind, right? So wind also affects putters the same as this. So if I'm into a headwind, obviously it's going to rise, tailwind's going to drop, crosswinds are going to swing the disc, right? So when you're further away, it's really important to think about the wind at first, but once you go up to your disc, you shouldn't be thinking about the wind anymore, because you already thought about it, you know how to adjust, and the number one thing that happens, I know personally for me, so I guarantee everyone else, is what happens when you guys miss. You guys right after, why did I tell myself that while I'm putting? You should not be internally talking to yourself while you're putting. You should be almost nothing going on up there. Because you guys probably, practice 100 putts the night before in your garage. You guys weren't thinking then, so don't think when you're on the course. Of course, much easier said than done, but that's the hard part to putting. Is, keeping your head clear of any distracting thoughts. Even if it's a positive thought, you really shouldn't have I'm going to aim 2 chain links to the right of the basket. And I know it's going to swing to the right as you're putting. You should be totally clear of anything going on in your head as when you're in your putting stroke, right? So what I personally do most times is when I go up to my putt, I'm thinking about number one, taking my time. You guys have 30 seconds for a reason. Use 20 of them. I'm not saying use 30, that's too long. Don't use 10, that's too quick. 20 seconds is more than enough time for anyone to putt and have a good routine, have your thoughts, erase your thoughts, and then putt, right? So the number one thing, when I walk up to my putt, I'm thinking about how dead center I'm going to make this putt. You shouldn't be thinking anything else. If there's a death putt, you shouldn't be thinking, if I miss, is this going to go to bounce? You should have that already thought about before you step up to your putt. So that way when you get to your putt, you worry about making the disc in the basket. Number one Which I've been mini on me, but I've had the same mini for 4 years. If anyone knows what it says putting is easy. It really is. And even if it's not easy, if you tell yourself putting is easy, I guarantee you putting will be a lot easier. So it's 99% mental of your confidence level, knowing you're going to make the putt. If you miss a putt, the odds are your next putt, you're not going to have as much confidence, you're probably going to miss it. You need to erase every other putt before that moment because you guys should have enough muscle memory from practice putting to where it's just routine, right? You're not thinking about it, it's all muscle memory. So the more practice you have, the easier your muscle memory gets, the easier your putting gets. Any other questions before I go on really quickly? Any random questions? Anything other than what I said?
So, the basketball thing. So, I find that if I don't screw my shoulders up, I'm off to the left and I'm off to the right. Can you find that too? That was one thing that they teach in basketball, shoulders up.
Yep. So that depends how you putt, right? So I play with a lot of people that kind of have their right shoulder way in front. Not that drastic, more like this maybe. When they come to their left hip, open up this way, right? So for a spin putter, you probably don't need to have your shoulder square because now you're kind of limiting how far you can reach back and let you go down. But it's okay not to have your shoulder square if you're a spin putter. Now you have more room to go to your left hip and come through. Now when you release it, you almost kind of like this when you're in your follow, right? So you're putting, you're going like this, now they're not super into it. For push putting, I would recommend keeping your shoulders square. Does anyone here do a full, true push putt? Most people are spin putts? Okay, that's a question. But yeah, so if you guys do push putt, if you do want your shoulders square, the whole thing is straight down, straight up. There really shouldn't be too much variance, so spinning side to side either way. But for spin putting, you can have a lot more variance in how you twist your shoulders. It's mostly just whatever feels more comfortable, right? Yeah. Yep. Yep, so if you guys didn't hear him, he said, what's legal when you do a step putt, a push putt, anything circle two? So as long as the disc leaves your hand before another foot goes in front, or you jump, right? So obviously you're not gonna jump and then throw, that looks silly, it's not legal anyways. So for a step putt, some players will go way in front and then release. That's legal, as long as you don't come down and then release. Same with jump, that was step putt. Same with jump putting. Like I just said, it's not going to make sense to jump and then release. So I guarantee if you're jumping, it's probably legal. Otherwise, it wouldn't look very good if you're jumping and then releasing, right? So most times you can have a good amount of build up and speed with your body before you really go through with it, and you know it's going to be legal. So I wouldn't worry too much about if you're going in front of your disc or not on circle two, unless you have a super exaggerated step before you throw. Then that's where it gets kind of iffy, but with enough practice, if you video yourself, it should be pretty easy to notice if you're doing that. So one of the biggest things is everyone says, what's the best way to be a good putter? And I say practice. So it's one of those things where I can almost guarantee I practice more than the person asking me why am I not a good putter, right? I practice more than them. So some people say, I practice every day, how come I'm not improving? The quality of practice is the most important thing, right? So if you're practicing your 80-footers all the time, you do your 10-footers about everything else, right? So you want to practice the putts that you're having the most. And in extension to that, the putts you're having the most struggle with. So when I do my putting, I do 90% of my putting from 25 to 35 feet. Of course, it's good to practice the 15, 20-footers, but if you're practicing your 25-footers, it's the same putt, you're just closer, so it should be easy. So practice your 15-footers, practice your 60-footers, but 25 to 35 feet is that money range where that's where 90% of your practice putting should be, okay? Another thing is, practice putting, if you don't like practice, it's boring, it's not fun. You need to find a way to make it fun for you. So I personally like practicing, so it doesn't affect me too much, but sometimes it gets boring. doing 100 putts every single day for years on end. So something that I do for my putting practice is you come by myself is I make it a game. And even if it's not a game, you can make it, a competition with yourself, right? So the main way I like to practice is I'll start at 20 feet, I'll keep putting, right? If I make two, take a step back. I make one, miss one, make one, miss one, miss two, take a step forward. That way if you're missing two in a row from that spot, go a little bit closer till you're making 3, 4 in a row. Keep stepping back, make two in a row, keep stepping back. That way it becomes a little bit of a game, and also that way you're not taking a stack of 30 putters and putting from 28 feet this exact angle every single time. Yes, it's good for repetition and all that stuff, but how often do you have 28 putts from the same exact spot in a tournament? 0. It's your first putt. And usually when you're practice putting, you miss your first one and then you make 8 in a row because now you know how to adjust. So it's good to mix it up in your practice putting so you're still getting repetition, all of that, but you're making it a little bit different every single time. And same thing with people who love to practice putt, they want to try to make all the 60 footers they can because that's what looks cool in tournaments, right? Like I said earlier, the top pros from 60 feet are making it 1 out of 4, maybe 1 out of 3 times. So and those are the best putters in the world. They're missing a lot more than they're making. So yes, it's good to practice how you're going to approach, how to throw your 60 footers. But I can assure you, you don't need to do 40, 60 footers in a row because now you're just teaching yourself to miss. It's like I said, you're going to miss more than you're going to make. So now you're teaching yourself that missing is how it's supposed to happen. So that's why I say that 25 to 35. Even if you're not the best putter, you should be making about half. If you're not that good of a putter, it's okay if you don't make half. Go up to 15, 20 feet. But you want to be making sure you're making at least half of your putt before you try to go anything further back. That's going to be the most beneficial and the best for your form, all of that. That makes sense. So knowing how to practice, and this is going to be different for everybody, but how to practice for yourself and maintaining good practice, right? So you do 200 putts, your arm's dead. It's awesome that you want to keep practicing, but take a break for a few hours. Maybe try again in the morning because you're not going to have a limp arm in a tournament from 20 feet and you're going to miss short every time, right? So you don't have to practice putt for 3 hours to have a good practice session. So another thing is, most people practice in a wide open field like this, right? So they have 20 feet, not wind dependent, but wide open 20 feet, nothing in the way. They're super confident, right? And you get to a tournament, you have a putt where you have to straddle, you have to crouch down, you have to adjust your putt to go under the branch, right? So try to make it challenging. Try to make it challenging for yourself by trying new putts, right? So I push putt 99% of all my putts in tournament. Do I spin putt? Yes, when I have to. But you have to practice those other putts in the meantime to know you're going to make those in the tournament, or at least have the confidence to attempt it, right? If it's not your number one putt, there's a good chance you're not going to make it. But if you give yourself the best opportunity to make it, then overall it's a benefit, right? So when you're in practice, you do all your repetitions with your normal putt. Try to switch it up. Try to act like there's a tree in the middle of the basket. So now I'm trying to bend it around the tree. So how many times do you do that in a normal field? Probably not that much, right? So make it interesting, make it challenging. Try new putts. Different release angles, Practice the Anheuser putts. Practice the straight. Practice the hyzer. You never know, you might like one putt for another someday. Who knows? But it's important to at least have the ability to know all the different angles of putting in a practice field so it translates better to your tournament putting game. Alright? All I got written down for now. Does anyone have any questions, or does anyone want a demonstration on a certain thing? Yeah, go for it.
For your push putt, I've always had the most trouble. I always miss high. Do you have like an active release point to think about, or?
So yes, for the release point of push putting, his problem is he misses high. is there a certain point that I know I want to release? Haven't really thought about that, but let me think about it right now. So when I push putt, I reach down pretty low, right? That's all my power is. I view my arm as a pendulum, right? So it's locked in straight, come straight down, come straight up. I bend my elbow a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty dead straight, right? That's what I know my release point is going to be too far off axis. When I come through, it should be about just below your chest. Anything releasing too high is probably because you putt nose down, right? So now you need the disc to be higher elevated to get to the basket at a reasonable height because you're putting nose down. That would be my best guess without ever seeing your putt, is you're probably releasing too high to overcompensate, nose down, or just, maybe the lack of power of getting the pop there too flat. So most putts are probably going to be just below your chest. That's where some people do their pre-putting routine with no disc. It looks silly to some people, but they'll stand there and go, try to envision how you're going to putt, right? Most of it's going to be at your chest. Same with push putting, even though I start lower, I cover the ground, but I get here and I release the disc. And I might fall for a little bit higher than that. That's just the power. So general rule of thumb, between your hip and your chest would be a good spot. You don't want to go too much lower or higher than that. Unless you're comfortable doing that, but I wouldn't recommend it for sure. Anyone else have any other questions about what I talked about, or even something super random that I didn't even mention and forgot?
How many putts a day do you say you throw?
So I don't putt every single day,
Okay.
but over a given week, I'll probably putt 4 to 5 times. If I'm not at a course or at a tournament, anywhere from 100 to 200. Anything over 200, that's a lot of putts. That's going to be, your arms can get tired, so you get dead. It's not worth it. If you say, well, I don't have time for 100 putts, or I just don't want to do 100 putts, do 20. 20 is better than 0. There's no number to get every day to know I'm going to get better if I do 100 putts a day. Obviously, more is better. Too much is worse, or not worse, but not as beneficial, right? So even if you're doing your practice round, and I'm a victim of it. When I go to practice round, I don't really putt for 15 minutes or warm up and throw 10 drives. I go to hole one, I'm ready to go, right? So even if it's something as simple as getting to the course 10, 15 minutes early, doing your 30 putts, doing your 10 throws to warm up, that's all going to be super beneficial and help you, get that confidence, get that routine. And a lot of times what happens is you get to hole one, you gave your 20-footer, you miss, and then you're ready to go. Get that out of the way so your first putt shouldn't be the first putt on the course. So, general rule of thumb though, I would say between 50 and 100 putts is a very good putting session. And 50 putters isn't a whole lot of time if you have, 5 to 10 putters to practice with. I carry about 20 putters in the RV at all times in a bag. I'm ready to go. Because I don't like putting one, going to get it, putting one. I can putt 20 in under a minute and be good to go. So, all about repetitions, quantity, and making sure it's the same every time. So, on something else is, when you go up to your disc, there's 1 putter people and 2 putter people. I'm a 2 putter people, right? So, when I go up to every single putt, I got 2 putters in my hand. What does this putter do, right? Absolutely nothing. Why do I do it? When I practice putt, I have 6 discs in my left hand. That way I can go. I can putt, grab it, get ready to putt. So if I practice every single time with putters in my left hand, you should have a putter in your left hand when you go up to putt. If you're one of the people that practice putt with 1 putter, don't have a putter in your left hand, because when else do you do that? Never. In tournaments, I guess, but never, right? So you putt in tournaments like you putt for practice. So when you do have a bunch of putters like me, everyone else has 20 putters in their practice, speed isn't going to do anything for you, right? So when you have a bunch of putters on a table and you're putting as fast as you can, you're not setting up, sure that helps with, quantity, repetition, all that. It's going to be putting practice, but it's not the best putting practice you can do. Am I saying take 20 seconds before you practice putt every single time? Absolutely not. You should be putting quicker. That way, when you get to your tournament, you're not thinking about your routine and all this kind of stuff. You're doing your routine to gather yourself, right? To calm yourself, not think about anything, focus on the basket. But once you collect your thoughts and you're ready to putt, now all your muscle memory and all your practice comes into play, where you don't have to think about it. You've already made that putt 100 times yesterday in your garage, so now you just trust your body, and you should be good to go, right? So if you practice putt a lot with putters, try disc in your left hand. Does it help with stability or anything like that? Not necessarily. It might for you, but that's not the purpose of it. So the way that you practice is going to translate to how you play in a tournament. So quality practice, quality play. Any other questions?